Hi guys, we're going to look at an example of a cold agglutinin in this small little case study I have here for you. So on this image here we have a panel that was performed. So you can see it is a 10 cell panel. Here's your little extra one here, and then here is your patient control. What we're going to look at, I know that was really wiggly at first. We're going to see we have 2+ reactions here at immediate spin. Immediate spin is associated, okay, that's your room temperature, that's where your colds are, this is where typically your IgM antibodies are going to react. Okay. What can happen, so in this panel here you can see it goes away at 37 in AHG, and that's really typical of a cold. Unfortunately, sometimes with a really strong one you can get 2+ reactions the whole way across. What we're going to see on this as well, you have your patient control, which is also coming up 2+. That's not a good thing. Okay, so we already know this panel's a problem. Everything's positive, we can't rule anything out. So something's definitely going wrong. Some clues we can look at from other departments can be very helpful in this instance. And so what I'm going to show you next, this is from hematology. So this we would go out, we would go to our buddies out in hematology, okay, and we would ask them what they're seeing. And this image right here is what it's going to look like stained and under the microscope. And you can see all of these cells are just all clumped together. What you have to be careful of is make sure you're looking at the right spot on the slide too. You can't be back in too deep. You need to be out near that feathered edge of your slide. If we look at it, you know, you want your slide to look like that. It's not real centered, but that's okay. And you want to be looking, making sure you're in this area, even maybe out in here. When you're back in here, your cells are going to look clumpy like that as well. But this is definitely indicative of a cold agglutinin, right? Which is different than if we would see Rouleau. So Rouleau, we would be seeing the stacked cells. Okay, so this is not Rouleau, cold agglutinin. Some of our other clues here, and I'm going to use my highlighter, we'll make this just a little bit smaller on here. So this is what your complete blood count's going to come across. And there's no names. You would have some names up here, but because this is patient information, we're not sharing that. But what you're going to see on here, this is a complete blood count, CBC. Okay. And it has like your white blood cell count on here, your red blood cell count, we have a hemoglobin, hematocrit, and what we're going to particularly look at right here, this MCHC, and that, as you can see, there's a flag down here that says greater than 37.5, we need to follow the SOP. So greater than 37.5, and we can see we're getting right here 163.9. So this is definitely way out of range, very increased, and again, it fits this picture right here. Okay, that's very indicative again of a cold agglutinin. Something else that you might see would look like this. Okay, and so your tube from your patient, your CBC tube, this one right here on the left, you can see these cells are actually agglutinating along the inside of that tube, and that's because it's a cold and it's no longer at body temperature. This one here on the right, that's completely normal and what it would look like. So what can we do to resolve this in any of these departments? Well, it's a cold. It's reacting at room temperature. We can warm all of our specimens up and our cells to 37 degrees Celsius and perform our tests there. If you're using gel, okay, or capture, because that is only at your AHG phase, you may be able to get a negative panel, screen, so forth. One thing I'm going to caution you with as well, when you have this cold, we're agglutinating with all these cells at room temperature. The other thing that you're performing at room temperature is your type and RH, your ABO and RH. So your back type may be agglutinating spontaneously as well. So in this instance, you may have your typing errors, your typing discrepancies. And so you may have to warm that as well. So you have to be very careful in that instance. Now we're going to scroll back down to here and look at this slide. And what I'm going to ask you, what types of infections? So there are several types of infections that are notorious for leading to this. And so this is where your Mycoplasma pneumoniae comes in. I think I got that all spelled correctly. All right. And this is where that big I, and then your mononucleosis. It's also notorious, and it's usually an little I. So those are some things to remember. Again, these are really good review because these are good certification exam questions, or any exam for that matter. All right, guys, that was our episode of Mr. Fred Cold. So hopefully that'll help prepare you for your tests and any real life situations where you're going to run into these cold agglutinants. Here we're going to look at another version of Mr. Fred Cold. So you can see we've performed a panel, and the big thing I want you to notice on this panel right now, your patient control is negative. Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, we have a negative patient control. The last one we were looking at, it was an auto warm, so it was reacting with all the cells. Our patient control was positive, and that creates its own issue. This one we have a negative patient control, which is good. I went ahead and I highlighted our negative cells right here. So we did get some negatives. They weren't on this. They weren't all positive and reacting like the last one we looked at. And so I didn't do the cross-offs specifically on this one because we're just going to go back and I just want to show you this example here and you can see it. I'll get a different highlighter in here to look at it. So this one here, we're going to look at M. And if you remember, M is actually a cold reacting antibody. It's usually not an issue because it is a cold, again, usually an IgM. So it matches our positive reactions here. So this is a cold that's reacting only at 37, and it has a specificity 2M. We'll review the reactions here because you can see we have different strengths of reactions. You know, I like to show you those. Okay, you can see we have 2+ and we have 1+, so I highlighted those 1+. And so this is a cold anti-M that we're looking at. And why are our reaction strengths different? Okay, well, remember, M and N, they are antithetical. Okay. And they're very good at showing dosage. So we can see this cell right here is homozygous for M. So we have that 2+ reaction over here. Here's another homozygous for M, 2+ reaction. Now, on these ones, I'll go ahead and change my color again. These are heterozygous. We have M and N. M and N are on these cells. See that? And this is where we have the 1+. Right? Again, here's another heterozygous cell. Heterozygous, 1+ reactions. And then we'll change this again. We have a homozygous cell, and we have a 2+ reaction. So you can see that dosage there with that anti-M. So there's your second example. This is just a cold, okay? And it is specific for, we'll put on here, anti-M. And then we'll review. So here we're going to label our heterozygous cells, US, and our heterozygous cells are down here at 5, 6, 7, 10, and then the TC. Those are heterozygous, and that's because they have M and they have N on them. Our homozygous cells on here are only positive for M, and they are these cells. And so they are 1, 4, and 9. Okay, great job, guys. Signing off.